Hey everybody, welcome back to American History with Mr. Finn. Today we are finally taking a look at what the other side of the coin is when it comes to our free market and capitalism, as we were talking about last class with the widening gap between rich and poor. These entrepreneurs who were making a lot of money were doing so in this free market, meaning there was no government regulation at all. Remember, laissez-faire, hands-off, no government interference. And what we said would eventually happen is based on that idea of social Darwinism or survival of the fittest. We would see, that small percent who had all the wealth start to get smaller and smaller and smaller until we have like 2% of the population controlling like 90% of the wealth, whereas 98% of the population has to fight over this 10% of money that exists. So eventually it would not go well. So during that time, we're going to start to see some of the opposite things that are going to happen. What are some ideas that are not similar to the free market? And we're going to take a look at them real quick. One is socialism starts to become a popular idea, although it doesn't get a lot of following because it was kind of a dangerous thing to believe. And same thing with communism, because again, in the United States of America, the idea of limited government, like, hey, freedom, 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 we still had those ideas. This was 100 years after the revolution, in the late 1700s, we're in the late 1800s now. So people still today have this very strong idea of, liberty, no government interference, like, freedom, freedom, freedom. So both of these don't get a lot of popularity, but a lot of people start to believe in the ideas that they have. So socialism, for example, is going to be the idea of government control over, goods and markets. Meaning, basically, in socialism, the idea is social. The idea would be this: everyone shares in the wealth. So what does that really look like in real life? So basically, this is what it would be. Imagine today that if we had a socialist country, what would happen is, you would go to work, I would go to work, we'd all go to work. But, instead of the government taking, let's just say, 25% of my earnings for taxes, the government would take 80% of my money and leave me with a very little amount. However, the government would be in control of all the goods and the markets and everything, and so the government would provide me with the things that I needed. So in theory, the idea is, I'm working real hard, and I give the government my money, and the government will divvy it up to make sure it is more, I guess the term, everyone shares, meaning it is equal. That's the theory behind it. The idea is everyone will be equal. However, the same thing that's going to happen with communism is the same problem that we're going to see with socialism. And we'll get more into communism, but for today, let me just give you a rundown of there's a slight difference with communism. With communism, this idea is that workers would be in control of the economy. So the workers would. So this idea for communism is similar in the sense of, hey, basically look at it like this. In communism, I should give you Karl Marx's name. The guy who comes up with communism is Karl Marx. Comes up with communism. So his theory or his idea is, hey, we have all these workers who are poor and they're working in factories, and we have the factory owners or the businessmen who have all the wealth. Well, why don't the workers control the factory, and then they can split up the wealth, and it can be another thing, equal. That's the idea between this. So basically these new ideas are just a reaction to the idea of a free market and no regulation by the government, because you're starting to see rich people be really rich and the rest of the people be really poor. And so socialism and communism are both theories that try to make it equal for everyone. So here are the problems that you're going to have. No system's perfect. You know, just like I was explaining with our free market and capitalism, if allowed to go unchecked by the government, it would end up with instability and a revolution of some kind. It would be bad news. However, there's also bad things about this. I mean, the idea first that you're thinking, oh, that'll be good. Equal, we'll all share, things will be great. There's no incentive, meaning there's no reason why you should work hard, right? Why should you work hard if everyone's going to be equal? If everyone's going to get the same stuff, you know, why do I work at all? Why do I work harder? So think about it like this. You and your best friend work at the same factory, and you work really hard, and you look over at your friend, and your friend has his feet up on the desk, and he's just hanging out. Is it fair that you guys get the same stuff? The equal amount? You know, where's your drive? Why should you work hard? That guy's not, your friend's not doing anything, and he's going to get, or she's going to get the same amount of stuff you're going to get. So there's no incentive to work hard. There's no drive. There's no competition to try and succeed, which will make everything better. That's the idea behind capitalism. So both systems kind of have issues here. You know, like, hey, you're going to give the government full control over things. Everything's going to be equal. Why do I work hard? Capitalism, if you don't have government involved, you end up having a huge gap between rich people and poor people, and a majority of people are poor. So there are problems. Anarchists, this is, you know, basically the idea of anarchists is this. They want no government, period. They believe that government in general is going to violate your liberties and freedoms, and so there should be none. However, you know, this idea, this anarchy is the idea that, like, there's no centralized government, there's no rules, no laws, no nothing. Craziness would happen in that case, but it is a group or an idea that is floating around in the late, 1800s. But the major ones really are socialism, communism, capitalism. But people are starting to think about this economy stuff because, listen, we're starting to see big business, we're starting to see cities rise up, we're seeing, big cities, we're seeing new factories, new inventions. This is a new time of economy, and so new theories on economy start to pop up. And so what we're going to find in most of this is that countries are going to kind of fall in the middle. Like I was saying the first time we started talking about this, does the government have any kind of influence in our economy? Yeah, it does. Like I said, we have the Food and Drug Administration, there's child labor laws, there's all kinds of different things that the government makes companies do, and regulations and rules that companies have to abide by or follow. That was not the case back then. And so we will see this difference or this change happen in the United States and other places. Even communist countries are going to have some variation where they have a free market part of it if they're going to be at all successful. But we have a lot of communism stuff to talk about when we get into the 1900s. So on this note, what do I want to say? Some things that start to pop up, some things we're going to be looking at coming up here in the next couple lessons. Something called this, unions. This is organized workers. Workers come together and they start to negotiate with the people who are in charge, and they start to say, like, listen, we have this, our workers union, all of us, agree to be part of this union, and we are going to try to say, listen, we need better hours, we need more pay, we need this, we need that, whatever they need, and they're going to try and, force the business owner to give them what they desire or what they need. I'm not going to get too much into unions today because a lot of issues come out of this, and this is going to be what we're going to be looking at next time. It's really going to be this. Labor fights. It's going to be labor versus the business owner. There's a lot of tactics and a lot of bad things that actually happen because it's kind of a crazy time. But that's what we'll be getting into as we move forward. But just looking at some of the economic theories of the day, these are the major ones. And so what I want you to do today for your assignment, it's a fairly simple assignment. Plus I told you some of the stuff. I want you to look at socialism, communism, and capitalism. Very easy. Those are your three. I want you to look up one thing, one positive or one good thing. Boom, boom, boom. And I want you to look up one negative or bad thing for each one. It means you're going to have a total of 6. You're going to look up socialism, you're going to tell me one good thing about it, you're going to tell me one bad thing about it. You're going to look up communism, one good thing about it, one bad thing about it. Look up capitalism, one good thing about it, one bad thing about it. It's a fairly simple assignment, but it does give you a chance to look into these different economic systems, these economic theories, and see what are some good things, what are some bad things. Just get an idea of it, because we will be looking at a lot of this stuff, especially communism coming up in the next century, really almost until the end of the year. Communism will have something to do with something we're talking about somewhere in the world, trust me. So on that note, let's get this turned in today for participation purposes and attendance. And that's it. I will see you next class.